Plans to Prosper is a new agency serving individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Tippecanoe County, Indiana. They offer daily living and medical support staff for individuals in the setting of their choosing, as well as provide opportunities for individuals to explore and make connections in their community, encouraging them to try new things and reach their goals. The agency started in the fall of 2021, but why was it started? Where did it come from? They say necessity is the mother of invention, and in this story, one mother's need became the beginning of something bigger. Mackenzie Mullet was born on March 18, 1999 in Wabash, Indiana to Bob and Jenny Mullet, their second of 2 children. But just 4 months later, something would happen that would change the course of their family's life forever.
We woke up one Sunday morning to a scream that we had never heard before. And I had never seen a seizure before, but when I saw her, I knew that's what it was. We took her to the ER, and the doctor was skeptical that that's what it was, and even said, babies twitch, and moms are nervous. So they continued to monitor her, and then she had a seizure, and he immediately called a larger hospital in Fort Wayne and had us transferred, and she had hundreds of seizures, and every test under the sun. We had started a new medicine to try to control the seizures. And while they did decrease, they did not stop. But they decided that they were enough that they could discharge her. And I remember at that time asking the neurologist how we were supposed to live like this with her having multiple seizures a day. I'll never forget the look on his face. It was as if he knew that our whole life had just changed, and we didn't quite understand that yet.
For the next 2 to 3 years, she had cluster seizures every 3 months, and we couldn't stop them at home. We didn't have the medications available that are available today. Every 3 months, we would be going to a hospital somewhere for anywhere from a couple days to maybe up to a couple weeks.
Lots of different medications. She was on the ketogenic diet. She had the VNS vagal nerve system implanted to try to control the seizures, and nothing ever really helped. So the next few years were a struggle.
Obviously, this affects home life, affects your job. I was firefighter at that point. This just became kind of a normal thing for us that when Mackenzie started having seizures, we had to head for a hospital to try to get them stopped. It was very difficult for me. I've always been the type to fix things, not ask for help. That wasn't possible at this point. I had many people step up and work some shifts for me, cover different things. Grandparents who took care of our other child at that point, grandparents that came to the hospital to stay when necessary. It truly took a village to try and accommodate all the changes that were coming towards us. After a few years, we pretty well determined that Mackenzie's seizures were not going to be controlled by medication. And it just became a matter of managing them as best you can. My wife was a stay-at-home mom at that point, so she did a great deal of the heavy lifting when it came to raising the kids. I was still working and working sometimes 2 or 3 jobs at that point. That was pretty much our lifestyle for the next 12, 13 years. We tried to take vacations when we could and not miss out on things that quote-unquote normal families get to do. Sometimes that was a struggle, but we did our best with that.
It wasn't until Mackenzie reached age 8 that the family finally received an official diagnosis, Dravet syndrome, a rare form of epilepsy that causes intractable seizures that are resistant to medications, and with that also comes very high behavioral needs and intellectual disabilities. The test for Dravet was very new, making Mackenzie one of approximately 50 known cases in the world at the time of diagnosis. According to the Dravet Syndrome Foundation, Dravet syndrome's current incidence rate is about 1 in 15,700, which would average out to around 528,000 cases in the current 8.3 billion world population, or about 0.006%. Mackenzie was also diagnosed with autism at age 10 and struggles with various mental health disorders, including depression, anxiety, OCD, ODD, and bipolar disorder. Up until age 12, Mackenzie attended public school in the special education classroom. Due to her learning delays, most of her school revolved around social skills and learning simple skills like ABCs, colors, and learning to write her name and address. At age 12, Mackenzie transferred to a new classroom at Wabash High School. Unfortunately, the change in the environment were too overwhelming and triggered self-harm and aggressive behaviors beyond the capabilities of the school staff to manage. It was at this point that residential placement was suggested to Bob and Jenny.
When the school was no longer able to manage her behaviors and asked that she stay home, residential was never something that we thought we would ever consider. And so we thought about homeschooling. We had her aide that she had at the time would come to the house for 1 hour a day to try to provide some sort of support. And we just really didn't know what we were going to do at that time. It was really one day that our older son came home from school, and I started our daily routine of getting him set up in our master suite with his dinner and locking him in that room. To keep him safe from her behaviors, that as I shut the door that night, as I'd done many nights, it just hit me that we had to at least consider residential and see what the opportunities were.
Bob and Jenny would ultimately make the difficult decision to enroll Mackenzie at T.C. Harris School and Academy, a specialized therapeutic residential treatment center and school for students aged 6 to 21 with neurodevelopmental disorders, autism spectrum disorder, and intellectual disabilities, located in Lafayette, Indiana, about an hour and a half from Wabash.
When she moved to T.C. Harris, it was the hardest thing we ever did. In the beginning, we saw some improvements. She had a really great team on her unit. The idea was that there's residential on one side of the building and school classrooms on the other side of the building. They have a really nice gym and cafeteria and facilities. We started to see her progress with her speech to where we were not there to interpret for her. So she was learning speech. She got speech therapy. She had a therapist that worked with her on her emotional regulation. And we did begin to see some progress.
For the next 4 to 5 years, my wife and I made trips back and forth to Lafayette at least every other weekend, many times every weekend.
In 2016, Bob and Jenny moved to Lafayette, around the corner from T.C. Harris.
The year after my son went to college, we had decided to make the move over to Lafayette to be closer to Mackenzie and try to figure out what was the next step, because she would be aging out of school in a few years.
We really had no idea how we would manage the high behaviors that she had. We planned for 4 years of what that next step would look like. We purchased a condo in West Lafayette, and we began to build a team of residential supports, a behavior consultant, music therapy, rec therapy. It really felt like we had a solid plan in place to where her home was close to us. We could be supportive and be involved, but then also have the professionals in place to help her work on those social skills that she needed to be successful.
Mackenzie would move from T.C. Harris to her new home in early March of 2020, days prior to COVID shutdowns.
We were told by many that when you go from child services to adult services and special needs, it's like falling off a cliff. All the rules change. Some things get much tougher to navigate. I can tell you it's more like you being shoved off a cliff and you're not prepared for it. And the plan was to hire a company to manage the staffing services for Mackenzie. Mackenzie needs somebody there 24/7 because of her seizures and her basic disabilities.
Obviously, COVID was a huge challenge with the staffing crisis and just everything that COVID brought with the isolation and just really lack of staff and lack of in-person supports. All of the therapists that we had set in place were no longer able to see her face to face. Really, the biggest challenge, even bigger than COVID, was that 2 weeks later, her cat suddenly died. She'd had the cat for 16 years, and he was her everything. He was living with her in her home, and she was devastated. That really triggered a deep depression, I believe. And it was the Sunday before the shelter in place. So then her pool that we used to go to every Saturday and Sunday suddenly shut down and was no longer an option. And of course, she didn't understand why we were suddenly saying no, that we could not go swim. Those two main events really triggered a huge increase in her self-harm and her aggressive behaviors.
Mackenzie's behaviors were physically violent. She'd hit you, she'd pinch you, bite, kick. She would pull Jenny's hair out. There were so many times you're ready to quit.
So usually when you have an individual who is, I would say, contained in a very structured environment, it's one of those situations where it's either going to turn positive, like, oh my goodness, look at the freedom I'm getting, or it's going to be, I'm not used to any of this.
The first residential provider we had at the very beginning of COVID was just simply not able to provide staffing. With her high behavior, she was attacking staff, pulling hair, putting her head through the wall, just very high extreme behaviors. They were not able to keep staff or provide staff, and that led us to looking for another provider that might be better equipped to support her. And we switched to a new provider about 5 months after her move.
Having consistent staff and having the staff buy into a behavior plan is really a key component, because staff make or break you. They're my eyes and ears when I go into a home. I rely solely on good staff, and that's so important and vital in my role as a team member and how to make things better for the individual. If you don't have consistent staff, it affects behaviors, because again, you could have an individual who, it could be a minor change, whether it be a food change or whether it be maybe a different staff moved in. You could have a lot of behavioral issues because of it.
The second company that we got, kind of the same story. It lasted a few months again, and staffing was tough. My wife and I were covering a lot of the schedule, and the company we were with suggested we put Mackenzie in what's called an ESN home, which is a home for very high behavior people.
So we were offered an ESN level home that would provide more support and security, but also came with multiple roommates with very high behaviors as well. And knowing Mackenzie, we knew that she would not be successful in a situation like that, and being so isolated away from family and her community.
We went to visit the home knowing that that was really about our last option with this company and with the state. My wife and I drove 2.5 hours to visit the home. When we got ready to leave, I just told her I couldn't do it. I couldn't accept the fact that this was the best we could do and that we were going to have to move Mackenzie 2.5 hours from us. At that point, we made the decision to try to do it ourselves.
Overall, I really feel like COVID sped up the process for us to realize that the residential providers that we were working with at the time really were not as focused on working on goals and making progress and really helping her reach her full potential, that we had put so much time and effort into making a plan to support for her.
Jenny began investigating the possibility of starting an agency and providing services for her daughter. She had to wait a few months for the next opportunity to submit a letter of intent, and then worked on and submitted the application a few months later. In October 2021, about a year after the process began, Plans to Prosper received its approval and began hiring and providing staff for Mackenzie.
It was a huge undertaking. Jenny literally was working night and day on it. We were both working full-time jobs still at that point, but we were also staying at Mackenzie's house every day and every night. And we did that for weeks while Jenny jumped through all the hoops that we had to jump through to start the business. We just kind of dug in, and honestly, we didn't spend much time together. Typically, I was at Mackenzie's house at night. Jenny was there during the day. She was also working, and I was also working. So it was a crazy time.
The hardest thing about starting the company was working full-time while staffing my daughter full-time, and then writing policies and procedures in the evening to meet all the requirements for the state of Indiana. After I received my approval in October, then we had 1 year from the time we started providing services to receive accreditation from an agency such as CARF. So I then began that process of rewriting the majority of my policies and procedures to better align with CARF standards and to pass that accreditation, which I was proud to receive a 3-year, which is the maximum you can receive on my first survey. I just completed my second survey in February 2026, and I received my second 3-year accreditation.
Over the past 4.5 years, Plans to Prosper has grown and expanded quickly, providing staffing and support services not just for Mackenzie, but several other individuals.
We hired our first staff and started staffing Mackenzie in December of 2021. My sole intention at the beginning was simply survival, and I really had no aspirations of taking on additional clients. One of the requirements to provide services for my daughter was that I could not only provide services for my daughter. So while I didn't have great expectations of taking on much more, I knew that we had to consider taking on other individuals. So really within the first 4 months of providing high quality trained and supported staff, Mackenzie started doing so much better. I was at a place where I could consider taking on another individual. I received a referral, and we went and met the young man and took him on in July of 2022. And since that time, we have added a variety of residential clients and PAC clients, and we currently serve about 35 individuals.
As a parent who has fought for these services for her own daughter, Jenny has a unique perspective in her role of providing services for other individuals and is able to connect with other parents and guardians in a different way.
I do have a high level of expectation of the quality of staff, the quality of training, the overall level of care and opportunities that we provide for our individuals. I also have a realistic understanding of the challenges that providers face in being able to always meet the expectations based on funding limitations and service definitions and guidelines.
As a guardian, keeping her busy and her having that sense of community and feeling safe is my biggest want for her. Being able to know that she's cared for and listened to, and her wants and desires are respected, and the flexibility to make those things happen. And I want to be able to know that at the end of the day, she's safe, she feels appreciated by her staff, and if she has a problem with staff, I want her to feel safe saying that to the people I'm entrusting to care for her every single day. And they've been a big integral part of her life.
You have to have a good team with communication who's willing to say, hey, let's make some changes, let's try some things, and as well as listen to everybody. When they interview and hire staff, they're like, I think that's going to be a good fit. And that's amazing that it's already being thought of in the process of, that's where I'm going to place that person. Obviously, when you know the individuals that are with the company and you can do that, you're going to have success.
In caring for individuals with special needs, Plans to Prosper also works to remove the stigma around those individuals.
Just like you have bad days, they have bad days too. And you have to be able to communicate as well with them. Not yelling, not talking down. Just make sure you're calm and communicate.
Perception is I'm caring for someone and it's very routine and structured and this is how it's going to be. And it's not. Even the little things matter. So offering that choice, even if it's something so small to where you're thinking oh, it's not going to matter, I'm just going to pick for them. That choice is so important.
I think what's misinterpreted sometimes is that they don't know the difference between being treated fairly or being treated with dignity, being treated like they're valuable. And nothing can be farther from the truth. Everybody realizes when they're being treated badly. They know when they're being treated well. And they appreciate it. Special needs folks, in a lot of ways, are just like everybody else. They want to be treated well. And they appreciate being treated well. And they show you that on a daily basis.
Plans to Prosper believes the quality of care people receive is directly tied to how the people providing that care are treated. They have made a very intentional decision to invest in staff through above average pay, meaningful support, and opportunities to grow. As the company has grown, it has also expanded employee benefits packages and training opportunities. The belief is when staff feel valued, they stay. And when they stay, real progress happens for the individuals they serve.
What people think a direct support staff does is that it's just easy. It's just hanging out. It is one of the hardest jobs that is just underappreciated and so needed to provide the support for these individuals.
I love Plans to Prosper. Anything you need, any questions or concerns you may have, they're a phone call, text away. Anything you need at the workplace, everything is always at your fingertips. Well, I love it here.
Plans to Prosper have given individuals a better life, meaning, a meaningful schedule, a voice. I hear this over and over again. What do we want? What's going to make you happy? What do you want? And that's, to me, the stepping stone of what makes success in this situation, as well as good staff. I see really good staff here. I see them wanting to be helpful. I see them wanting to communicate, document. I read the notes in some of the situations. But again, when you're doing that, that means you want success.
As for Mackenzie, she's still living at her home in West Lafayette, making crafts, caring for her stuffed animals, also known as her buddies, and taking them for car rides around town, and painting her and her friends' finger and toenails every chance she gets.
Things have greatly improved. I tell people all the time, Mackenzie seems to be living her best life. And that's why we started the business in the first place.
Mackenzie used to have 2-to-1 staffing, which is a really big financial responsibility for Waiver to provide 2 staff for 1 person, and she no longer requires that. She has just 1-to-1. She has also started having people over in her home, which is a huge thing. She hosts a few of her friends over every single Friday, which is phenomenal. She loves doing it. And I love being able to stop in and see her in action. And she's also started accessing her community, and she's made really, really great natural supports within her community. She has favorite staff at restaurants. She goes in and she knows what she wants to do. And it's really awesome to be able to see her connect not only with paid supports, but making those connections within the community, and the community kind of seeing Mackenzie in action and just obviously loving her.
As a behavior consultant, many individuals, they don't know how to communicate, or they don't know how to say, I want the candy bar, or I want a pop. And then what happens then? They have a meltdown. The purpose I give to other people is, again, try to give them a voice, because all behaviors have a meaning. Even one day I knew Mackenzie was mad. And I said, are you mad? Are you mad at that person? And she said yes. And I was just blown away, because that was the first time that I got that from her. And I was like, okay, we're making progress.
The biggest moment for us that really proved to me that we did the right thing was last summer. Mackenzie, you have to understand, had not left the house in about 2 years. We slowly started working on car rides to get out of the house and transition. We then worked up to going through a drive-thru and ordering a meal and going back to the house. And then eventually last summer, she started wanting to get out of the car and go into McDonald's. That was a huge step. One day, after several months of doing that, we pulled up to McDonald's and started to get out of the car, and she said, "Be right back." She wanted to go in by herself, and of course we panicked and didn't know what to do, so we gave her the credit card and she went inside. She had made several connections with some of the staff that worked there, and it happened to be her favorite staff was working the register that day. So my husband and I watched from the window, and eventually we got the thumbs up from the cashier and we saw her walk down to wait on her food. So we hurried back to the car, and she then came strutting out of McDonald's with her bag in one hand and her drink on the other hand, smiling from ear to ear. And that was just everything. Just her joy, her confidence. She was so proud that she was able to do that by herself. And that's really what it's all about.
As I told Jenny that day, of all the things that I know I've messed up, and there's been a lot of those, seeing her do that, I know that if we never did anything else right, we did right by Mackenzie. We did the right thing for her.
In reflecting what Plans to Prosper has meant for them, Bob and Jenny are hopeful for the future and what the agency can do to support other families who find themselves in a similar situation they were in just a few short years ago.
Plans to Prosper at this point, what it means to me is hope. Hope for those people who are special, who maybe haven't been given the best opportunities in life through no fault of their own. It just means a better future for the special needs community and an appreciation for the little things that maybe people take for granted, that I get to see special needs folks, Mackenzie and others, live a higher quality of life because Plans to Prosper believes everybody brings something valuable to life. And some things are simple and some things are complicated, but all of them are valuable.
There is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. And there are people who are willing and able to help. We have lived through a situation where the services did not quite fit and did not meet the needs. And we have now been able to see what is possible when the services do align and an individual receives the support that they need to make the most of their opportunities and to live a meaningful life. We moved into our current location to have a physical facility where we can host social opportunities, small groups. And as we look to the future, we are hoping to build on the progress that we've made and focus on that small community of individuals and social opportunities for our individuals to work on their specific goals.
Just know I'm grateful for all you do. I am blessed to know you, and I know your love is true. So